Okay, so I saw this pop up, and I just figured we'd check it out. It's the Antikythera mechanism, I believe is how it's pronounced. It's referred to as an ancient Greek supercomputer. Uh, Pretty sure the thing's just like an analog calculator of sorts, prediction stone sort of thing. But I'm curious. I've heard about this thing in passing, but I've never really like looked into it too much. So just figured we'd check this out and see what it's about.
Everyone today is familiar with the digital computer, a machine that deals in ones and zeros a few million at a time. But have you ever heard about analog computers? Well, perhaps not as much as you probably should have. An analog computer is a computational device that uses mechanical principles rather than digital maths to make calculations. You may have seen one or two in your time, like a wind-up clock, for example. Quite how long these devices have been around is a bit debatable, but most agree that the first analog computers, mostly astronomical clocks, were first invented in and around the 14th century. That was until one discovery in 1901 near Antikythera in Greece, which changed our understanding of the history of computers forever. It was a discovery so shocking that for nearly 70 years, mainstream historians of technology dismissed it as either a fluke or a fake. That is until a small group of dedicated researchers unraveled its mysteries and proved that the ancient Greeks did indeed possess astonishingly complex analog computers of their own, and nearly a millennium and a half earlier.
Can we just talk about how the ancient Greeks had like way too much shit? Like they had way too many computational and mathematical devices and astronomical or astrological. No! Astronomical was right. Astronomical was right. Rare Vero. What's cracking? What's happening? What's hizzy? What's popping? What's cracking? What's hizzy happening? I forgot my own thing that I said. Interesting. I was not following. Hey, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. Welcome in. We're just learning about some weird computer thing. Not much. You? Just chilling, learning about this weird computer thing. We're just cracking along. Some ancient Greek device for computational values of some sort. We just started it, so I don't really know anything about it besides what I just said. But yeah.
Than we thought.
I was in your top recommended too? Sweet. Man, I'm getting recommended as hell today. Neato.
One day in the year 1900, Captain Dimitrios Kontos was in command of a crew of sponge divers from the island of Symi as they...
Wait, what the fuck is a sponge diver? What? What? A sponge diver? Excuse me?
Plumbed the depths off of Point Glyphadia off the island of Antikythera. Always going well when one of his crew...
Oh, are they diving for sponges, like sea sponges?
A group of ghost women or mummies at the bottom of the sea. Divers often report strange sightings, but Kontos nevertheless documented the incident and informed the Greek government. Within a year, the Hellenic Royal Navy was back at the same spot to investigate, and what they found...
Let's learn.
There, on the seafloor, the Greek Navy discovered an ancient shipwreck at a depth of about 45 meters and brought up a treasure trove of bronze and marble statues the women the diver had seen, as well as pottery, jewels, coins, and a mysterious box. This was a cargo ship full of many of the finest Greco-Roman artifacts ever discovered. We now believe that it may have been destined for the court of Julius Caesar himself, a gift from the island of Rhodes. The items were catalogued by the National Museum of Archaeology in Athens, where the box, which appeared to be little more than a corroded lump of bronze and wood, went largely unnoticed as the curators of the museum fussed over the far more arresting finds like the coins and the statues. And yet, of all the treasures this mysterious ghost ship had given the world, none were greater than that little lump of bronze and wood. By May of 1902, Valeria Stace, a staff archaeologist at the Athens Museum, had noted, barely in passing, what appeared to be a gear wheel embedded in a piece of rock. He theorized that the device must have been some sort of ancient astronomical clock. Unbelievably, museum officials dismissed the find, reasoning that the Greeks and Romans never possessed that kind of technology, meaning that the object must have been coincidentally dropped off by a passing ship, perhaps 1,000 years after the initial shipwreck had occurred. Perhaps scholars' lack of interest in the object was a blessing in disguise. There it sat, in the museum for nearly half a century, a curiosity neglected as human beings went from the Industrial Revolution to the Computer Revolution. Its relative anonymity meant that it remained undisturbed, and it was never disassembled until 1951, when Yale University's Derek J. DeSola Price took an interest in the device. A physicist and clock aficionado, Price would become the grandfather of a modern understanding of the mechanism, pouring out the device's impressive secrets over the decades to come. He first recognized markings of the calendar month Libra on one of the visible gears as corresponding to the ancient Greek dialect of the period and place in which the shipwreck occurred. Beginning with the assumption that the device was some kind of calendar clock, he set about
Wait, how do you, like... I wonder if he's gonna say how he, like, got to fucking mess with the thing, you know? Like, how do you just acquire something like that? Like, hey, you guys aren't really that interested in this, right? Can I fuck with it? Can I mess with it right now?
reconstructing its possible original design. In order to convince the curators of the Greek Museum, Price needed to offer compelling evidence of what the mechanism might be. It took a long time, until 1971, for Price and the Greek nuclear physicist Charalampos Karakoulos to be given permission to examine the mechanism. Together, they devised a method of scanning the device using X-rays, which enabled them to image the mechanism layer by layer, revealing its internal workings without ever destroying the machine as a whole. The series of X-rays the pair produced of the 82 fragments of the mechanism were revealed to the world in a 70-page paper published in 1974. The result was shocking. A device so complex in its design as well as in the knowledge that it implied about the workings of the solar system that many mainstream scientists at first derided it as a fake. Throughout a subsequent half-century of study, scientists have painstakingly catalogued and examined...
Is that like a model of what it actually is? Because that's way crazier looking than that lump that they were showing. Dank Baj, thank you for the follow, G. This is way cooler looking. They should have opened with this. They should lead with that. You know what I mean?
Throughout a subsequent half-century of study, scientists have painstakingly catalogued and examined every millimeter of the mechanism, and today its origin is without question in the academic community. The device is an extremely complex analog computer, once consisting of at least 40 gears, which would have been capable of calculating anything from the exact position and size of the moon in the sky at any point during an 18-year period to the positions of every then-known planet in their orbits. It could have predicted eclipses, full moons, and even the speed of the moon across the sky, and it would have told its owner the future dates of Olympic Games and much, much more. The mechanism would...
Wait, so this is like that in Avatar: The Last Airbender when they get into the sand library thing, you know, and they're like down there and they find the like adjustment machine that fucking moves the sun and the moon around and all that, so like they can tell all the dates of the next eclipse, and then they plan the attack on the Fire Lord. It's the same thing. I wonder if that concept was like based on this machine,
which some believe to have been
this mechanism
and more complex than what is now visible to us, reveals that the ancient Greeks and Romans understood astrophysical concepts which were only rediscovered in Europe in the 16th century or later, including lunar standstill or lunastice, which occurs when the moon reduces its furthest north or south point in a lunar month and its apparent motion ceases. Or what's more, they devised ways of building a machine to precisely mimic of this behavior. It also reveals a far greater mastery of complex miniaturization of mechanical devices than anyone had dared think existed in ancient Greece and Rome around the 1st century BC. It has sparked the imaginations of thousands of anthropologists and historians as to the many secrets that may yet remain in European history. The mechanism is constructed mostly of bronze in an ingenious array of interlocking gears which use complex mathematical procedures to rectify the solar year, the amount of time it takes for Earth to rotate around the sun, with the lunar month, the amount of time it takes for the moon to transit between nodes in the northern and southern hemisphere, in a 19-year cycle that was only rediscovered in the West during the Enlightenment. This means that the Greeks had a deeper understanding of astronomy than had once been thought, a knowledge which rivaled 16th century science. There are yet more secrets hidden within. The mechanism contains a compound central shaft, a series of shafts within shafts with rod and pin gearing. Again, a piece of technology that was not thought to exist in ancient Greece, which helps it to display the position of both the Sun and Moon, as well as Venus, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn, and to predict their future movement through mathematical calculations carried out by compound gears inside the mechanism. The mechanism's calculations occur when the gears with different numbers of teeth work together to recreate the appropriate relative motion of different celestial objects. The side hand.
Who the hell in ancient Greece figured this out? How did people figure this out? Like, I gotta say, like, if you're in ancient Greece and you figure out something like this, like, you're a lunatic. You're a lunatic. That guy's an absolute psychopath, whoever figured it out. Who constructed this damn thing? What? This is so intricate. Just the gearing system alone.
To recreate the compound gears inside the mechanism. The mechanism's calculation.
That's insane. And it's got like the outer layer gears like up here and down here that like rotate the centerpiece in like a semi-elliptical sort of like pattern going on.
Calculations occur when the gears with different numbers of teeth work together to recreate the appropriate relative motion of different celestial objects. The side handle, meant to be operated by a person, turns a main gear, which represents the solar year. The power from
Thanks for the follow. I appreciate it.
Subsequent connected
What's cracking?
To produce the motion of different objects, including the sun, the moon, the planets, and the constellations. In order to achieve this, a dazzling display of mechanical workmanship was required. Each gear must be utterly precise and fitted ever so perfectly in place for the device to have worked. It is in this way that the mechanism calculates the future motion of celestial bodies. For example, in order to calculate the 19-year cycle in which the solar and lunar years overlap, and to accurately show where the moon will be in the sky at any given point during that cycle, gears that indicate the solar day and the lunar day are connected by a series of smaller gears which translate the motion of the solar day into the corresponding motion of the lunar day. The mechanism also appears to contain a number of novel complications, a name given by horologists for a device within a device which subtly changes its operation. These complications seem to be inserted into the mechanism in order to make very fine corrections of the observed motion of the planets that are not accounted for in the Greeks' understanding of astronomy, and yet do actually exist because of the cycles in planetary motion which the Greeks saw but did not understand. This included the way in which the elliptical orbit of the Earth around the Sun, or the movement of the Sun itself around its own center of gravity, were thus errors in their observations which needed to be corrected for mechanically. In order for the
I feel like the Greeks could have designed a really good transfer case. Really get the horsepower to the wheels, you know what I'm saying? They were able to use gear ratios to adjust for the differences between the solar day and the lunar day, and all of those concepts with every single planet, sun, moon, everything in its proper relativity, while all rotating, separating, and coming back together in different intervals to like properly replicate what's going on. That's insane. That's insane. They could have built a hell of a transmission. What up, David? Noah, another David. More Davids. Welcome in. Thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. We're learning about some ancient Greek technology here, and why the ancient Greeks would have been the world's greatest transmission builders.
Mechanism to demonstrate the apparently irregular motion of the moon around the Earth, how the moon appears to speed up and slow down in its orbit from our perspective, the mechanism uses an ingenious series of compound canted gears, offset from each other and spinning at different speeds, which are driven by the central drive shaft, but which come into contact with the moon's controlling gear only when the moon is meant to be in motion and not when the moon is meant to stop in the model. What is perhaps even more incredible about this model is that despite the fact that it can predict the positions of all of the planets and the moon and the sun in the sky, it actually does this using the assumption that the planets and sun orbit the Earth. Thus, a complex series of canted gears must be used to represent the epicycles of each celestial object, circular movement around a fixed center of mass, which was the way in which Greek mathematicians explained the apparent motion of the sun and planets around the Earth. It is not
All right, look, no, this is bullshit. More insane. Where's more insane? He was here earlier and he said that this was a party trick. This thing's insane. This is not a party trick. This is the most complex gear ratio thing prior to like the 1400s, maybe. Thousands of years ahead of its time in like gear ratio mathematics for astronomical prediction. What? This is nuts. Every gear, like they had gears. Okay, listen. To put this into perspective, right? There's these gears. Like, hold on. I can just pull this up. So these gears, right? These guys, the ones labeled as the planets, they are here to show the position and the relativity, right? They're the gears responsible for turning that specific planet notation. Now, these gears on the outside, what they are here for is, in these multitude of different sizes, to adjust the ratio of speed as these pass by them. Because everything moves in like an elliptical pattern, like in reality, like everything's doing ovals, right? But from their perspective, like, okay, the ancient Greeks were smart. I don't know if they knew that or not, but they knew that they sped up and slowed down, and at certain periods they were faster and slower. So they were able to compensate for that by putting these gears on the outside that sometimes boost the planets, which is nuts. These are like the boost things on the ground in like in Mario Kart.
And planets around the Earth. It is not far-fetched to imagine that if such devices had become really widespread in the Greek and Roman world, some astronomers like Copernicus or Galileo might eventually have been inspired to solve the problem that kept such models from functioning in periods longer than a few decades. Indeed, it was the invention of precise timekeeping and exact observations of the heavens that did later inspire astronomers to move past the model of the Earth as the center of the universe.
Technically, the planet could pull those, causing slowness. Yeah, which is crazy too, because technically the planet representations all being gears in different ratios means that the planets all literally affect each other because they are attached to each other by gears, which is nuts. This is a hell of a fucking stopwatch, dude. Hell of a stopwatch.
Not all of the Antikythera mechanism's abilities are known, and it is now believed that there were probably additional gears and dials which did not survive the device's underwater burial. However, modern reconstruction shows that the mechanism would have been capable of reconciling the solar and lunar calendars, representing the precise positions of each planet and the sun and moon over a 19-year period.
So many people tuning in.
Would have been capable of predicting solar and lunar eclipses, and appears to have been able to show the timing of the ancient Olympic Games based on inscriptions dials found on the back of the mechanism. 5 dials on the back of the mechanism demonstrate the 235 synodic months, showing that the Greeks understood 235 lunar months to be extremely close to 19 solar years. This allows the user to set the current solar day on the front of the dial and have the day translated to the lunar day within the 235-month cycle on the back of the mechanism. It's believed that these calculations could have been important for planning important events, such as military campaigns, as well as religious ceremonies, particularly when the ancient Greeks needed to know the length of a day in the future and the brightness of the moon on that day, as well as its position. Using this mechanism, a Greek or Roman general could predict that the moon would be full and located in one particular place in the sky, and that the day would end at a specific time, possibly conferring an advantage in a nighttime attack. Fragments of texts that were inscribed on the front, back, and inside cover of the mechanism showed that this was also a teaching device. It would have been used to explain the apparent motion of the stars and the planets, possibly to a young pupil or even a group of students. While, of course, all these calculations very well could have been and probably were done by hand, the ability of a Roman or Greek leader or teacher to visualize the precise conditions on a day in the future would no doubt be incredibly useful. There's no doubt that...
Yeah, what? Yeah, I know what the sky is gonna do. That's insane. I'm from Sweden. U.S., Michigan, Detroit, baby. Detroit! You know what I'm saying? 313, 33, and I'm the 1G. Fuck, I can't remember how to do any of the things. My brain is collapsing today. I am in the bag. In the, as some would say, cat bag. My brain is fading into the nether. It's disappearing. Crumpled into a small plastic format. Shoved in the darkest place. In the darkest depths of the world. Buried with the Antikythera mechanism. It's been holding down. Also, a Swedish femboy. Yeah, I got that from the cat bag. Oh, not the Swedish part. Hey, it's cool, man. The Swedes make my favorite fish candy. I don't think they actually make it, but it's called Swedish fish, so, you know. Just as long, hey, look, hey, I'm cool with the Swedes, right? I'm cool with the Swedes as long as y'all don't bring none of that surströmming.
But among the many treasures on this particular shipwreck, the Antikythera mechanism was likely a central attraction, probably representing many thousands of hours of skilled work. Many questions remain about the device's origins and the maker, leading some to theorize that it came from the hands of Archimedes himself. While there's no proof of this, it's absolutely clear that the maker had a very clear understanding of all that the Greeks once understood about the heavens, and it is extremely unlikely that this device was just a one-off. Its workings are too clever, its craftsmanship too precise to be the result of a lone experimenter. It was manufactured by someone and was probably of great monetary value.
Yeah, I mean, they probably made a bunch of these. That's way too intricate to like function properly and not be like...
ongoing, as scientists continue to apply new methods such as microfocus, X-ray computed tomography, CT scans, and polynomial texture mapping, PTM, to try and understand both the mechanism's purpose and the means by which it was initially constructed. One of the most important findings of this research is the revelation that whoever made it knew exactly what they were doing, and almost certainly had made more than one such device. Master clockmakers who have studied the mechanism, and some who have even recreated it using ancient methods, note how the workmanship reveals no obvious corrections or the addition of materials to a gear after it has been cut, indicating that the maker was extremely masterful, or that the workshop that created it was specialized in gear making to an extremely high degree. This may, in fact, be new evidence that the Greeks at one time were able to produce assembly line products and may have owned very complex tool-making machines of which modern historians now know extremely little. However the mechanism was made, the maker...
Yeah, this is just proof. He's saying what I said earlier. This is just proof that the ancient Greeks could have made a phenomenal transmission and/or transfer case. They would have been drivetrain masters.
had most certainly done this kind of work before. When fully constructed, the Antikythera mechanism may very well have been the most powerful analog computer ever constructed at the time. And yet, the precision and confidence of its design and execution strongly indicate that it is the product of many years, perhaps even generations, of complex clockmaking that predates Western European mechanical clocks by over 1,000 years. The precision of the mechanism also strongly indicates that the Greeks were beyond the Babylonians in astronomy and timekeeping. It had previously been assumed that most of the Greek understanding of astronomy had been learned from the observations of Babylonian astronomers centuries previously, but the Antikythera mechanism, which includes complications in the orbits of Venus and Saturn which were unknown to the Babylonians, also proves the Greeks had surpassed their inherited knowledge of the heavens. These findings present...
Well, yeah, no shit. What? Obviously, they knew more than their even older counterparts. Yeah, duh. Of course they do. They learned the same stuff, and then they applied it, and then they learned more. That's what people do. Duh.
Great mystery. What happens to all the other evidence of these profound technical and intellectual gifts possessed by the ancient Greeks? One answer may be as simple as it is frustrating. It may be that devices like the Antikythera mechanism, constructed of relatively soft bronze and subject to inevitable tarnishing and mechanical fouling, were probably never intended to last for centuries to begin with. The Greeks may have invented horology, the making of clocks, but they may also have invented planned obsolescence, the thing that keeps other examples like the mechanism from reaching us through the mists of time, and it may be the same reason it's hard to find an original iPod. They just weren't valuable enough to be preserved if they stopped working. It may have just been cheaper to build another. This all leads us to ask, what other secrets remain buried in the seas of the Mediterranean, or indeed all over the world, just waiting to be unlocked?
Interesting. Yeah. One of the chatters earlier said this was like they was able to predict a few things and was like a neat party trick. And I need them to come back so we can fight. Cause that's way beyond party trick. That thing's sweet. It's like a technological marvel for how many thousands of BC were the Greeks? $12,000 BC, so 3,000 years ago. 3,000 years ago, and they had that kind of tech and advancement. Well, I mean, honestly, dude, that thing's really neat.